Welcome subscribers to another preview for a Warhammer 40,000 stop motion battle report, and this week we've got the Astra Militarum versus the Dark Eldar. Now I'm breaking it down into a few different segments just for this preview, where I'm going to try and show just a few ideas on the strategy for each particular side, the setups, the board beforehand, and also maybe a little bit of story element to it. So I'll just give it a bit of a run through. So I've spent probably the day, most part of the day I think, just basically setting up this board. Just ignore my camera gear and stuff there. You'll understand why it's there in a minute, because I've got the army sitting off to the side. So we've got this board. The idea here is that they've returned to the outpost Valanchos Delta 4, which was held by the Vostroyans here. And they, if you remember that battle, that was the first battle of this season, they were fending off some chaos zombies and the like. So this is basically returning to that battle, and the storyline will explain why that's happening. You would have seen it last week. So I've really just got the elements of the board. The outpost itself's been reinforced. That's probably what it's trying to represent by having these buildings around the side. It's basically been built up. But we've got, like, I'm not going to go into the storyline fully, but we've got two armies here. You might not be able to see them all. It's taken me a day to basically assemble this into the right order to then bring out onto the board, same as what's up here. So we've got some Dark Eldar. We've also got Joe Hercules up the back there with his retinue of Chaos Dreadnoughts. We've got just basically the Dark Eldar army, and there's elements of the Astra Militarum there as well, which will make their way out. So this is part of the army there. And then we've got basically this over here. So that's the first part. So what I'll be doing now is I'll go through and record the storyline with my camera there, just with Joe Hercules coming on the board and Yars, and they get up to mischief or whatever they do. I haven't actually worked all that out fully in my head yet, so we'll work all that out. They'll have a bit of talking and a few things will happen, and then the respective armies will come onto the board there and there. And then once I get that onto the board, I'll probably do another video. You'll see the setups on each side, and then we'll talk about what their overall plans would be for the battle. So just trying to mix it up a little bit. So there we have the board at the moment, and just stay tuned, we'll have the setup in a minute. Okay, so I've spent the last 2 hours trying to move around the board and do the introduction for the actual battle, which you saw last week, and this is what we've got so far. This is the setup or the deployment of both sides, both armies. We've got here with the Astra Militarum, they're all pretty mechanised on that side. As you can see, you've seen it all last week. Over this side we've got the Dark Eldar, who have just fresh off torturing some dude. A Vostroyan who was sitting up there. So the storyline went that there was some Vostroyans here who cleaned up the last remaining Nurgle cultists, but along came the Dark Eldar and came up and killed all of those Vostroyans bar one. They dragged him down and did a bit of torture on that, and then basically the Slanesh guys were pretty excited about all that, but they thought all this is a bit too much to take on because there's only like 4 of them, 4 or 5. Just those guys over there, even though they are dreadnoughts, they still couldn't take on all that. Anyway, so they went and hid in this house over here. And now we've got, I haven't actually worked the storyline out at this stage, so you would have seen it last week because I would have gotten around to working it out, but along came some reinforcements for the Vostroyans, and now the Astra Militarum there are going to fight the Dark Eldar. So that's what we have to the deployment phase. Okay, now at this stage we haven't had the battle yet, or I haven't worked it through it in my mind or on the table, but I'm just probably thinking through a little bit of the strategies that are going to be used by each side. Obviously, looking at the terrain on the table, we've got one large structure up in the middle here, which is going to offer a fair bit of cover. A lot of this cover up the background here is not really going to come into play. It's more of a scenic thing with the build up of that fort there. So really we've got a lot of low-lying cover here, and that goes all around the table, but a lot of the combat's going to fall around this area here, so this area is going to be fairly crucial in the middle. There is a few low-lying barricades on each side, so that still might offer a fair bit of cover, but obviously whoever secures that part in the middle is going to benefit greatly. On the Astra Militarum side, there are a lot of troops in reserve. Obviously, like there's groups up here that, for example, is in the Stormlord. We've got a couple of Zeppelins there. What I'm using, Valkyries, is I'm using as Zeppelins, and still there's a few groups underneath there. You can't quite see them, but those are inside the Chimeras. So there's 5 Chimeras. So look, these guys are going to probably stay back and try and bombard the Dark Elder as they surge on. There's a lot of fast moving units here. We've got some Reavers, all the various skiff types. So they'll just zoom along and no doubt try and secure the base, the ruins in the middle. So that's pretty much as simple as that at this stage. I haven't really worked out a lot more detail, but you know, it'll depend on how the battle comes out, but that's really the underlying strategy. Run to the middle, secure that, try and use that as a base to pick off those tanks, pop them open and get the guardsmen out to take to the torture chamber. So there we have it. That's the preview for Battle 14, so I'll see you next week with the real battle.